I got a lower job position at work. He came home looking sad. I almost spilled my tea from being surprised. His company has been doing badly recently, and there are big changes happening because they're reorganizing, but I didn't think it would affect Scott directly. Still, I think it's important to support him since I'm his wife. Well, I guess we're just having some bad luck. Times are tough, but I'm working too, so don't worry. I said this in a cheerful way. My name is Catherine. I'm 50 years old. I work in an office. I live with my husband Scott, who is a bit older than me. My high school sophomore daughter Julia and my 72-year-old mother-in-law Ethel, and I don't always agree, but since I'm working away from home, we only see each other when I'm back, so I decided not to worry about it. I told my daughter to act normal around her dad, who's feeling down because of the job change, but then Scott started sharing his frustrations, and he directed all of his upset feelings at me. This often happens where people take out their anger on those they're closest to and trust the most. The next day, when I was cleaning the hallway on my day off, he walked by and suddenly said, "You've gained weight since we got married, haven't you?" Well, I am 50 years old. After all, it's common for women to gain weight around menopause, but according to the health check at my job, I'm not overweight. I replied to him, then he said, "Forget the health check. You look unattractive if you're overweight. It's just because you're lazy. I'm embarrassed to be seen with you and your round figure." He called me ugly and locked himself in his room. I was so surprised that I dropped what I was holding, and it made a loud noise. It was like an arrow had hit me suddenly. From that day on, Scott's behavior towards me got worse, and to make things worse, my mother-in-law joined in after listening to our argument. As I was going up the stairs with a basket of laundry, my mother-in-law came down from the second floor, or more accurately, she waited at the top of the stairs. She would make comments like, "It's terrible if you weren't so fat. We could pass each other on the stairs without waiting. Your obesity takes up too much space." When I served fried chicken for dinner, she would say, "This is what's making you fat," and then she would take my plate away. She even suggested that only the three of them who weren't overweight should eat, leaving me out. My gynecologist told me that after middle-aged people either gain weight or lose weight, but my mother-in-law was on the thin side. She was skinny like a dried-up tree. I learned to tolerate her petty teasing since it was something I was used to, but what really hurt was how my husband was treating me. After that incident, Scott stopped talking to me. He wouldn't even say thank you or comment on the food I prepared. He ate silently and left the table without a word. He moved around the house without acknowledging me. Even when we shared a room, he wouldn't look at me or talk to me. I couldn't bear being treated like I didn't exist. One night in our room, I gathered my courage and asked him if I had done something to deserve being ignored. He said, "Not really, but I only want to talk to people who are human." He went on to say, "I don't want to be seen as part of a family with someone so overweight if you care about me losing weight." I was surprised by his words, but I know it's normal to gain weight after middle age, even though I walk a long distance to work. I'm doing my best to stay healthy. I was trying hard to fight the weight gain due to getting older, but he just turned his back and said that if there were no results, it meant I wasn't trying. He told me not to talk to him anymore, and from that point on, he completely ignored me. My mother-in-law continued to make fun of my weight, and I ended up only being able to eat salads and boiled vegetables. Scott just watched without saying anything. It seems like my marriage might be falling apart. I started packing my things during my free time. If Scott is going to treat me like this, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's better if I just disappear. When I told my daughter that I was thinking about going back to my parents' house, she understood that she had seen how Grandma and Dad always picked on me during meals, and it was tough for her to watch. She said she would come with me. We could live at my parents' place, and she could still go to high school from there. Tomorrow is the day when the demotion I knew about will happen right after the winter break. Scott came over with a smile and suggested having a drink just this once as his new role without subordinates starts tomorrow. I wonder if he finds it hard, but at this point I'm not interested in going along with it. Even his fake smile annoys me. Scott said we should have a nightcap during dinner and offered to make wine spritzers. It might be the first time he's spoken to me since the demotion announcement. He said Julia could have juice and he'd make a wine spritzer for me too. When he turned away for a moment to look for the TV remote, I smelled the drink he made. It had a faint smell, but I recognized from cooking. I couldn't believe he would make me drink. I've had enough of my mother-in-law's teasing and being ignored by my husband. I decided to get back at them. The wine spritzer pushed me over the edge. I asked Scott to get some cheese from the fridge. It's really delicious from a local dairy farm, and I pretended to be happy about family time. Scott went to the fridge, and while he was away, I swapped my drink with the one on the seat to my right, Ethel's seat. When Scott returned with the cheese, I called Julia and my mother-in-law to the dining room. They took their seats. It was a regular dinner, except I didn't have the meatloaf or cornbread salad. I had stewed chicken soup cheese and the wine spritzer. Julia had juice. Julia broke the silence and said, "Let's eat." Scott and my mother-in-law remained quiet. I took a sip of the wine spritzer Scott made and smiled, saying it was good. Scott was watching me closely. I had some salad, and then another sip of the wine spritzer. Suddenly red liquid sprayed out from my mother-in-law's mouth like Godzilla's fire breath. Julia got surprised, and some of the liquid splashed her salad. She asked if my mother-in-law was okay. Julia quickly got a towel, but as she returned, she saw something strange. Julia said, "Grandma, your mouth looks like spicy cod roe." My mother-in-law panicked and accused me of putting something in her drink. I pushed her hand away and said it wasn't me, it was Scott who made it. My mother-in-law's mouth was still covered in sauce, and she turned to look at Scott, who was shaking. I leaned towards Scott and put my hand on the table, applying some pressure. I told him that I could smell what he had put in the drink because I used it before. It was something I bought at the food fair in Alabama. It's not as famous as super spicy sauce, but I liked it because it had a bit of a lime taste, which felt cozy. That lime scent is what I smelled, which means he mixed quite a bit into the drink. My mother-in-law might not have noticed because of the wine spritzer smell, or she might have thought the lime smell was part of the flavor. She probably drank it without realizing. But this prank was really mean and cruel. I actually meant for Catherine to drink it. Scott admitted he wanted me to switch the cups and drink the dangerous one. "I won't switch to that dangerous drink," I said quietly, keeping my pressure on Scott. I felt my mother-in-law was also in the wrong when she found out it was meant for me. She wanted to push it onto me, but I wouldn't switch to that dangerous drink. "Why did you even think of doing something so terrible?" I asked him if you were gaining weight, and spicy food speeds up metabolism, so I thought it might help. He explained. What a lame excuse. I laughed in a sarcastic way. Did he really think that excuse would make things okay? It was embarrassing. I pressured my husband, and he hesitated. And he moved his chair back slightly. "I'm not crazy. This is a good reason to help your diet." He defended switching your cup and drinking it. "I made it for you." My husband backed off. I moved closer again. "What are you saying?" "You made it, so you should taste it to see if it's good," I said. I slammed the table. My husband seemed to be trying to backpedal, but I wouldn't let him off the hook. I stood up and put the cup with a drop of hell in front of my mother-in-law and threw it aside. Then I moved closer to my husband. I confronted him, asking if he really thought I'd drink something. He suddenly said he made with a smile. Didn't it cross his mind that I wouldn't believe him after ignoring me for so long? But then a quiet voice spoke. It was Julia. She said that taking frustrations out on me, the one who supports him the most when things are going well at work, and treating me cruelly was childish. She said it was unbearable to watch. She stood up too, facing her father. "Is it wrong to be overweight?" Julia said she mentioned how I wake up early and walk to work and how I bring lunch. I'm trying my best. Then she turned to her grandmother and said that taking away my dinner like the fried chicken was like something kids do. She said it was embarrassing. Julia continued saying that I go to the doctor and stay active, but despite that, my husband ignores me just because I gained some weight. She asked what his problem was, and she said the atmosphere he creates by ignoring me. It makes the house feel tense. She asked if he couldn't see that, and then she added that even Colonel Sanders and Aunt Stella from the cookie ads are plump. There's something called happy weight. You know, if Mom becomes a lovely grandmother like Aunt Stella, I'd be happy. Julia seemed to be done talking to her grandmother. She turned back to her father. When I have kids and I'm a grandma, wouldn't it be nice if they said, "Mom, you've reached the happy weight," and we laughed about it? That's what I hope for. Please don't ruin that dream for me. She said this in a cold, direct way, but her words warmed my heart like warm milk with cookies. It's sad to see a father being criticized by his own daughter. And one more thing she said to her dad was that if you're going to ignore someone because they gain weight due to getting older, then realize that with your thinning hair you might not get noticed easily. Also, the atmosphere at the dinner table was tense. Her words had brought a chill to the room. It felt so cold that even a banana might freeze. It seemed like she said everything she wanted to, and then she turned to me. "Mom, that's enough. It's time to let it go. It will be better for you." She said her words, which surprised me. It would be better if I let go. Yes, that's right, I should let it go. As I said earlier, my dream is to see you holding my child, saying you've gained some happy weight, and laughing for my sake. I want you to be happy because that's part of my dream, so please let it go, be happy, and fulfill my dream. Her words filled my heart, and I didn't care about being ignored by my husband, the mean things my mother-in-law said, or the drink issue. Warm tears rolled down my cheeks. I sent through my tears. She patted my back and gave me a gentle push. "Come on, Mom, okay?" I replied, and I went to the kitchen to get a document. I had been hiding for a while. My husband was startled for about a month of being ignored. I started thinking that it might be best for us to go our separate ways, so I presented the divorce papers with only my name written on them. I just wanted you to lose some weight. If you had lost weight like I asked, I would have been satisfied. He said, "I didn't mean for this to. I didn't expect this to happen." Julia retorted sharply. It's on those who didn't notice until things got serious, and they're upset about something so childish. Ethel, my mother-in-law, interjected, trying to defend herself, but Julia shut her down, saying that living without her adorable granddaughter wasn't a joke. "Julia, you want to keep living with us? Your grandmother's right." Ethel said softly. Julia declined, saying she didn't want to be around people acting like middle scholars anymore. My husband tried to make amends, saying he would taste it. He took the glass before him and gulped it down, just like Ethel did earlier. The red liquid sprayed out of his mouth, making his lips look like lobster lips. Julia, he said, took a picture of them with their lobster lips on her phone and said they were both lame. She told me it was time to go and left the room. I followed her. Now all that was left was a dinner table with splashes of wine cocktail mixed with a drop of hell. My husband and mother-in-law had red lobster lips. I went to my parents' house with Julia. When we explained the situation, my parents were furious and confronted Scott and Ethel. They brought back the divorce papers, and I ended up getting divorced. My ex-husband, Scott, faced career setbacks and spent his remaining years without any major achievements. Apparently, he had a habit of ignoring things he didn't like, which contributed to his demotion. I learned about this recently. On the other hand, my ex-mother-in-law Ethel, who had been difficult, seems to be stuck in a two-person household stalemate. Eventually, I received a call from her saying things wouldn't feel so stale if Julia and I were there. She said this was proven by the 17 years we lived together. I declined and decided not to go back. It's better to gain weight now, as taking care of grandkids requires more physical work. This was confirmed when my new boyfriend, who I met after divorcing, picked me up and joked about my diet. We both had been divorced before and understood each other. "Get in, Catherine," he said, and I hopped in. He glanced at me and poked my puffed-up cheeks. "Give me the time you saved by riding in the car today for our conversation."